So we're now going to move on to our next species. This is Purple Loosestrife. So this was introduced from Eurasia to the northeastern United States in the early 1800s. This is both intentionally brought over here and it also spread through other means, such as horticultural purposes. So, horticulturists really like this plant. It's very showy and pretty, and they developed different cultivars in the mid 1900s for ornamental purposes, and they thought that these were sterile. But they did a series of greenhouse and field experiments and found that this plant readily hybridizes with the native and invasive. So it was just creating very fertile hybrids, which is not great. I believe this process is not done anymore, which is good, but this also helped to spread this plant. Ethnobotanically speaking, this was brought over for medicinal purposes. Immigrants may have introduced this plant for purposes such as treating dysentery, diarrhea, and various uh, uh, other like wounds or sores or skin conditions. Beekeepers really like the purple loosestrife as well. It produces very abundant flowers on their spikes, and bees really like this. It apparently has a specific flavor for their honey that they like as well. And also another of dispersal was ship ballast contaminant. It was unintentionally contaminated in that ballast, and also wool fleece. So wetland managers were the first people to kind of notice that this plant was really becoming a problem in wetlands specifically, and it was really degrading these wetlands. So they were the first to sound this alarm. And within its native range in Europe, monocultures of this plant can form, but they are very short-lived due to biocontrol specialist insects and pathogens that keep it in check. So with the purple loosestrife, there's also the winged loosestrife, which is a native here in the United States, and they both utilize the same pollinators to pollinate themselves and reproduce. And as purple loosestrife essentially becomes more abundant and takes over this winged loosestrife, it causes pollinator competition between these two, which adds further stress to that native. This plant also really greatly negatively impacts wetland functionality as well, as it replaces broadleaf cattail as the dominant species. This leads to increased downstream eutrophication, nutrient flushes, and it also impacts the detrital communities. So the essentially detritus is the plant material that breaks down at the end of each season. It breaks into food source for different detrital feeding organisms. And with purple loosestrife, this detritus is not as long-lived or viable as the detritus of native plants. So this is really impacting the detritus community because it's not as long-lived. I believe the purple loosestrife detritus only lasts in the fall, whereas native detritus usually lasts fall through spring. And this impacts all the way up the food chain to organisms such as salmonid species that rely on that detritus. So it has a pretty big impact throughout the wetlands. Going on to some control methods. This first slide is talking about some physical methods that you can use. These are pretty time consuming and they also have high probabilities for further dispersal of the purple loosestrife. So you can do hand removals. These work best for smaller, younger plants and smaller populations that are isolated. Again, these are time consuming. This plant can also reproduce in optimal conditions from broken stems, cut stems, and stuff like that. So you are running that risk of spreading it that way as well. Um, Especially with cutting. Uh, And you want to be careful with these methods too, because if the plant is in flower or in seed specifically, you could be dispersing the plant as you are, um, removing it. There's this method called disking where you use a device such as a tractor. You pull these discs through the soil that essentially uproots the soil and um, essentially cuts up all the plant material. But again, that's not really the best since they can uh, grow back from cut stems. You can also mow as well, but this can be difficult since this plant often grows in riparian aquatic conditions. So your topography may not be exactly flat, um, and you can also be spreading propagules this way. So this is a cultural control method that can be used. It is experimental, and this is flooding. So with flooding, you're targeting the purple loosestrife seedlings, and this can be successful at a depth of greater than 12 inches of flooding. Um, this uh, this does, however, impact the native plants, and because as you can see in that picture there, the mature purple loosestrife is perfectly happy being flooded. It happens all the time and is part of their life cycle and dispersal methods. But with the flooding, you're actually impacting negatively those native plants that are trying to germinate. So this is not the best method because, again, you're only focusing those seedlings. The mature plants are doing just fine. You're impacting those native plant seeds, and you're also leading or causing further dispersal of propagules via the flooding. So chemical control is really, again, bread and butter for purple loosestrife. You can use a glyphosate solution with a non-ionic surfactant, and all of these are typically applied when the plant is actively flowering, summer to early fall. With glyphosate, you can also apply it to just the tops of the plants alone, and that can be effective. You can also use imazapyr, which is really effective after mid-bloom. And you want to make sure with these guys as well that you're using aquatically formulated herbicides, and you want to have all the proper permitting and licensing and all of that as well. Metsulfurin can also be used to actively growing plants, again with another surfactant. This one, it can only be used in certain habitat areas, so you just have to be careful when using it uh, in those areas. Triclopyr can also be used early on in the season for focusing on those seedlings, and you can also use it when it's in bloom as well. You can also combine different herbicides, such as 2,4-D and dicamba. This formulation is broadleaf specific, which was really effective because these aquatic riparian areas often have sensitive monocot species such as sedges and cattails and stuff like that. So this method, herbicide method, will not harm them, which is good. So again, herbicide treatment should be conducted as early as possible in order to kill the plants and prevent seed production. These plants can produce up to 2.7 million seeds per plant per growing season, so they are pretty prolific seeders. And yeah, just making sure that you treat these plants before they go to seed is best. And um, in treating these plants, you can see in the picture there, our technician Declan Foster is spraying a pretty big infestation of purple loosestrife out on the Chehalis River. And with large infestations like this, you want to have a plan, right? So a really great method that is backed in science is, you treat the margins of the infestation, and then you can kind of slowly work your way back towards the middle of the infestation each year. So that is a pretty good method for treating those bigger patches. All right, so this is just showing you the purple loosestrife life cycle here. So you can see in the spring, those seedlings are popping up. This is a great time to hand pull or chemically spray those plants. In the summer, they are actively growing and flowering. This is a really great time to do a chemical control, making sure that you're preventing the plants from going to seed because they are major seeders. And then in the fall and winter, they are, in the fall, they're going to seed. This is not a good time to get in there and try to pull the plants out because you'll just be spreading the seeds. This is a good time, however, to survey if you feel comfortable with identifying the plant when it's kind of in its more dormant stage, especially in the winter when they're just kind of dead stalks. But those are kind of the different activities that you can do throughout its life cycle. And with Purple Loosestrife, it has a whole suite of different biocontrol species that do different things. These first two species are two different types of leaf-feeding beetles, and the research to assess biological options for Purple Loosestrife began in 1986 in Europe. This is the first time that biological biocontrol programs were created just to target an invasive species that was impairing the flora and fauna of an area rather than just strictly agricultural purposes, which is interesting. Support for this program was substantial from land managers who were seeing that, really damaging effects of this plant. And there has been long-term data collected from New York, which documents that these insects have increased the native diversity over time. One of the first examples of biocontrol resulting from uh, native plant recovery. So this is a really great success story with the purple loosestrife biocontrol. And these leaf-eating beetles are really abundant across North America, and they are readily feeding on the leaves, as you can see. They can really completely do some damage and really defoliate those leaves there. These two species have similar life cycles and histories, which creates a synergistic relationship between them. So this is the root feeding weevil. Only the larvae feed on the roots, as you can see in that picture there, and then the adults will generally consume the leaf material. And they only usually do this at night. So if you were to walk by this plant during the day, you wouldn't really see any biocontrol species, but you would see the damage happening to the leaves. Next is the flower feeding weevils. The adults first feed on leaves and then they feed on the flowers as they develop, which damages the developing ovaries in the flower before they open. This reduces seed output through flower bud abortion. And one egg is laid within the flower bud, and then the larvae will then eat the flower material as they develop. Weevil activity can be observed on a plant by the distinct circular opening in the flower buds that you can see in that picture there. So this is a really cool image that I found in one of the research papers that I was looking at. And this is just showing you that biocontrol takes time to kind of take footholds within an area. So starting at year zero there, you can see that's when the biocontrol species are released. And then from there on, it takes time for the continuation of generations kind of to proliferate throughout the area. And as you can see, as time goes on, there's more biocontrol species that have reproduced. And then you start to see some native plants start popping back up. And you can see all the way up to year 25 and beyond, there is still a little bit of purple loosestrife, but you can see that this is a pretty effective transformation between a purple loosestrife monoculture to getting some biodiversity back. And I also want to highlight too that with biocontrol programs, uh, not only does it take a long time for the biocontrol species to establish and start making a damage on those invasives, it also takes lots of research and time and considerations during the preliminary phases to find species that are viable for the target species, and then also making sure that they will not be damaging or harming any other non-target species. So there's a lot of work that goes into biocontrols, but as